Hello everyone and welcome. I'm Deb and this is DB Designs and Sewing Australia. It's Friday night and my last client has just left. So I thought I'd come to you with some footage that I made the other day when I was making my second pair of Falconer Pants, showing you how I make a seam in denim, how I press it, the stages at which I press the seam. If you'd like to see the end result, stay tuned. So this is where we're up to so far. Finished the fly, sewn the pockets on and in, and connected what is the side pieces of the jeans. So to get a really good finish, all I've done is stitch these sides. I haven't done anything else with them yet, haven't overlocked them yet. So the first thing we're going to do is, after we've stitched the seam, is steam the seam. And this embeds the stitching line into the fabric. And so rather than the stitching line sitting on the top, it actually embeds it into the fabric. So for all of my seams on everything I make, regardless of what fabric it's made in, I do this. I steam every seam, and that way you get a really good finish and it becomes very, very neat looking. There's my seams steamed, and the next thing we need to do is overlock it. Overlock these seams off. But these pockets are sewn into the seam, so we can see that the pockets are there. So what we need to think about is which direction the seam is going to lay the flattest in. And as we can see, this is with the seam, and I'm sure the pattern for the Falconer does tell you that, to press the seams towards the center front, which is what we will do. Now we're doing this before we overlock it, and it might seem like a lot of pressing, but it's how you get the best finish. I am pressing this before I overlock it. Now I've got a thread sticking out through. There it is there. And I can just feel which direction, and that it's going in the correct direction that I want it to go to, which is towards the center front of the jeans. And the reason they tell you to press the seam towards the center front is because if we press the seam towards the side, it would create bulk. So here are the insides of the jeans. It's not overlocked yet, but it's all pressed down. So it's smooth and it's flat. Now on the other side, if we were to look at it, and if we were to think, well, I really want the seams to run in this direction, you can see how much more bulky this would be, and it's not going to lie flat. So in this case, it's a pretty easy decision about which way your seams will lie, but it's not always the case. So with other garments, it's not always as clear cut as it is in this case, and you need to think about where your seams are intersecting and which way you want them to lie and which way is going to be the flattest and the best. So I have pressed these before I've overlocked them for a reason, because now I'm going to overlock it and it's going to lie better if I've already pre-pressed it. So I'm just going to go and overlock it. So now you can see all of that pressing results in really perfect seams. We look at that, it's lying really, really flat. So the pressing of the seam before you do the overlocking is going to result in a much neater, flatter seam. So I hope that was helpful on how to get a more professional finish. But the main thing with these pants is thinking about which direction our seams are going to lie. We can't have them lying the other way because it's going to make it too bulky, and we should always be thinking about that with everything we make. The Falconer pattern does say which direction to press the seams to, and they were the same way that I have pressed mine. But not every pattern will tell you that, and sometimes if I sew jeans or cords that have a side seam, I overlock those side pieces separately and I press the seam open to eliminate bulk. That's not the case in these jeans, and they're not, even in the heavier denim that I did the first pair in, they're not bulky. But some of that is because of how this was treated when I was sewing it together. So I hope that was helpful. Some of the keys to a perfect seam is to steam your seam after you've sewn it on the sewing machine. That embeds it in the fabric. Then press, if you're going to overlock it, and you're going to overlock it together and not as single pieces, press the seam in the direction that it's going to lie before you overlock it, and you'll get a much nicer result. So that's all about the seams. Okay, so that was my explanation on how I do seams, especially in denim, especially in heavy fabric. Here are my Falconer pants, all finished. Really happy with them again. I will do some photos with them on. I'm just a bit short of time today. I just had an urgent dress to fix for someone who's going to the races tomorrow. So I've done that, completed that. She's picked her dress up. I also have to find something to sew tomorrow at the Australian Sewing Guild in Bendigo. So I'm going to that tomorrow morning, and then by the time I get home from there, my daughter and 2 grandchildren will have arrived. So I have been doing other sewing. So I made the Falconer pants, and I made 2 hoodies. This is a furry hoodie. It's very fleecy and furry on the inside, and I had to even vacuum the window ledges. And this one's in a polar fleece. So that's for 2 of my grandchildren that are coming tomorrow, and that's not for them to take home. That is for them to have when they're here, because apparently they don't wear dressing gowns. And I think, well, you will when you're here. We don't have central heating like your house. What I was going on about in the video for the Falconer pants, for the seams, gives you an excellent finish on the inside as well as on the outside. All that extra pressing, although you think it takes a long time, it actually doesn't, and it can make it much easier to sew. So really happy with these pants, like I am with the first pair I made. And as I said, I will pop them on, and hopefully I'll get some photos of the kids in their hoodies as well. But I won't be doing that till next week. I hope you enjoyed me showing you how I do my seams in denim. And just always remembering, if you've got an overlocker that's a bit tricky, and if maybe the blades on your overlocker are not really, really sharp, when you get to a part that's got a whole lot of layers, clip it. Clip it out so that all your blades are doing is going past it and it's still overlocking it. Nothing wrong with doing that. When you get to really heavy sections and you think my overlocker is just going to want to dance up and down on the same spot, and then it's going to be making a noise and it's not going to want to move, and I'm going to have to drop the foot off to get it. Yeah, we've all been there and done that, because the best way to get something unjammed out of your overlocker is, the first thing to do is to drop the foot off and take the foot out. Then you can see a lot more and start cutting those threads away so that you can get your garment or your item out from under the overlocker. But if you're coming to those tricky parts and you think it might be a problem, trim it. So this is quite a wide seam allowance. It's 5/8 or 1.6 centimeters, so a lot gets cut off on these, because you can see it's down to only this big now. Quite a bit cut off. And if I had an overlocker that I knew was not going to behave itself really, really well, I would have clipped into those, clip some of that seam off the side where it goes under the blades, so that that actual really thick part doesn't have to go under the blades. The needles only have to go through it, and it would pass through perfectly. So if you think your blades are not sharp enough, maybe your overlocker's really old, or it's just cantankerous, which they can be, do that, because it'll save you a lot of trouble and a lot of angst and trying to get it out from being jammed in there, which is in the end why I bought another overlocker, because I was done. That the overlocker that I accidentally wrecked, which is still in a box down here because it was only 4 months old, and I persevered with it and I had it repaired, but I haven't yet taken it to Kieran in Bendigo. If he can fix it so that it's perfect, I wouldn't mind giving that to Phoebe. So she will be coming tomorrow, and apparently she's got plans to make a whole lot of things in 2 days, according to her mother. So that's what I'll be doing for the next couple of days. It's actually started to rain here, which is fabulous. People were just saying this morning, I hope this is just not a fantasy we're all having, that it's actually going to rain today. It hasn't rained for so long, and the laundromat's always packed with people from farms doing their washing there because they've got no water left. So hopefully the rain lasts a fair while and people's tanks can get a bit of water in them. Anyway, everybody have a wonderful week. It's a long weekend in Victoria this weekend because it's the King's birthday. So public holiday on Monday. Everybody have a fabulous weekend. I'll talk to you all soon. Bye.